Hey guys, we are back! It is so great to see your smiling face today, and I have some big news here for you. As long as I can remember, I've been with Nikon. I have the Z7 right now, and before that I had the D850, before that the D810. Yeah, you get the picture. I bought a Sony when they released the A7R, and I originally bought the A6300 back when my son was born, so I have a smaller camera, seeing that I was now carrying around a 300-pound diaper bag. And more recently, I picked up an A6400 to add to my bag. Now, this was my B-roll camera that didn't get used all that much otherwise. The camera was beautifully engineered, but just never felt it was 100% for me. Heck, I even picked up a Panasonic GH5 earlier this year as well, which of course we used for this video. Where I'm leading with this is my camera collection has been a big mixture of various rigs, none of which do 100% what I need them to do. And you'll notice I didn't say anything about Canon yet, and that's because I never had one until now. So I've been getting to know the Canon EOS R, and I wanted to give you a few reasons why I think making the switch will be a good plan for me. Now pull up a seat and let's go. Now, I know many of you are asking, Alex, why the EOS R now? I'll start by saying this. A year ago, I wouldn't have even considered the EOS R. The lens selection wasn't all there, and there was some autofocus issues. However, Canon has some killer glass out, and they recently released a firmware update that improved the autofocus and the eye detection, so they fixed two of my biggest problems that this camera had. Now, in addition to that, I came to realize that none of my current cameras really fit the bill for what I need. Let me clarify. My Z7, I think the photos are extremely incredible. However, now that I'm getting more into video production, I'd like to have a front-facing screen. Plus, while chatting about dislikes, the Nikon's autofocus lock needs some improvements. I've lost track of how many times my Z7 here has struggled to lock focus on what was dominating the frame and instead focused on something that was in the background. Now, with my Panasonic GH5, there's really no better camera for video, if you ask me. But as good as it is as a video camera, I think it falls short in the photo department. That being the case, it just can't be the one camera that I leave the house with. Same goes with the Z7. It's great for photos, but not quite as functional for the video as I would like. The one thing I did like about the A6400 is the front-facing screen. Now granted, it flipped up, which made it hard to see beyond the microphone, but at least it showed you something. In addition to that, the A6400 was super small and lightweight, but for me, the ergonomics were off and it just didn't feel right in my hands. You know what I'm saying? When thinking about what camera I wanted to add to my kit next, guys, I literally had three criteria. First, it needed to be good in photography. Second, it needed to be good for video. And third, it needed to be easily portable, something that I could easily throw in my bag and head out the door at a moment's notice. So I needed something that addressed the weaknesses of the Z7 and the GH5. Enter the EOS R. Now guys, as I looked deeper and deeper at what the EOS R offers, I quickly realized that, hey, this camera here is just about perfect for what I need. So now let's take a look at specs of both of these cameras. As you can see, there's plenty of similarities and differences between these cameras. Now, what I don't list there is the differences in size between these cameras. The Sony just weighs 0.89 pounds and measures 4.72 by 2.64 by 2.63 inches, while the EOS R weighs in at nearly 1.5 pounds, so nearly double the weight of the Sony, and measures about 5.3 by 3.9 by 3.3 inches. That's a pretty big difference. Now, this isn't to say, guys, that the EOS R is a big or bulky camera. You know, take a look. It's far from that. It's just a much bigger camera than the tiny A6400. So now let me walk you through my thoughts of the EOS R for the first few days I was able to go shooting with it. Now, my first day with the EOS R was all about getting familiar with the camera. And guys, as a Nikon guy, I was a little concerned that I wouldn't like how the EOS R felt in my hands. But I have to say, it felt super natural right from the start. I like how the grip feels. I mostly like the layouts of the buttons and the dials. More on that in a second. I like the brightness and the sharpness of the LCD. The raw files are so much better in this camera than any of my Sonys. If you ever shot with a Sony, you know there's a lot of tweaking that needs to be done to the images to get them right. But with the EOS R, the raw files are so much better. Plus the menu layout in the Canon just crushes the Sony. It's just much more intuitive. By day 2, guys, I knew I really liked this camera, but I wasn't completely head over heels with it because the shutter and the aperture were ass backwards of what I was used to in my Nikon. That is, until I found out that you could actually switch the button assignment, so now the aperture and the shutter wheels are in the same orientation as the Nikon. Score! Now, so far, one of the big items I wish the EOS R had was a joystick in the back, or a pad or something back here. I know you can set it up where you can swipe your fingers all around, but it's not the same for me. On day 2, I did some experimenting shooting video. One of the bugaboos with this camera is that a lot of people say the video just plain sucks. You know, I have to disagree with this. The 1080p out of this is really outstanding. The quality of the 4K video is really good too. Yeah, it's at a 1.8 crop, but honestly, it doesn't bother me. I mean, heck, the GH5 here is a 2x crop. You kind of work around it. The camera does have C-Log and 8-bit internal recording, which is awesome. It gives you such better color than anything that I got out of the Sony a6400. Yeah, it doesn't have 10-bit internal, but you can record 10-bit external, so again, it's not really a big problem. I have to say, I love the flip-out LCD as well. Those of you that record video know how invaluable the front-facing screen can be. You can see yourself and you can ensure that you have everything framed up exactly how you want it, so it just works that well. Okay, by day 3, guys, I was really sold on this camera. In fact, I put my Sony and all the lenses, batteries, and everything I had associated with that camera up for sale. The following day at 10 a.m., the a6400 had a new home with someone whose needs and uses were perfect for the a6400 as a primary camera. After I get rid of all the Sony stuff, I had more time to really hunker down in and play with this camera. And the big aha moment for me was on day 3. I realized just how good the Canon's dual pixel autofocus system is. Guys, I think a lot of people get tied up in Sony's autofocus system, which, don't get me wrong, have lightning fast speeds and a gazillion autofocus points, but honestly, it took only 3 days for me with the EOS R to be impressed more than I ever had with my Sonys in the past. A prime example of this is when I'm shooting with my EOS R on my gimbal. Unlike my Z7, the EOS R nails autofocus just about every time. It's just not something I have to worry about with this camera, and that's just great peace of mind as I get more and more into video work. Kind of final thoughts here. As I said earlier, a year ago, guys, I would not have even considered this camera, but since they addressed the autofocus issue and they released a really good set of native lenses, those issues have been resolved. Plus, a year after its release, the camera has dropped in price down to $1,800 at the time of this recording. And since this camera can serve as a one camera I take with me, it ticks off all those boxes I wanted in a new camera. Great for stills, great for video, and its small, lightweight, and portable body. It's funny that we're talking about this here because just the other day I did a video that spoke about 11 mistakes people make when buying a camera. And one of the things I mentioned is that you need to find a camera that best works for you. I also mentioned how some people make mistakes of being brand loyal when they don't need to be. And here I was shooting with a Sony camera out of loyalty instead of finding the best camera for my needs. Well, it only took me 7 or 8 years, but I'm glad I finally took my own advice. Now, I realize I'm only in the early stages of being a Canon shooter, and that I'll probably find some things about this camera that are going to annoy me or I just don't like. But I have to say this, that for right now, I'm really liking this camera a lot more than I thought I would. If you aren't that familiar with the EOS R and want details on feature specs, check the description down below the video here. We have some additional Photography Talk articles about this camera. In the meantime, I'm going to get back out and play around with this thing. As always, guys, thanks for tuning in. If you found this video to be helpful, hit the like button down below. If you're currently not subscribed to the channel, really would appreciate you subscribing. And while you're at it, hit the bell to be notified as we come out with new videos. So with that said, guys, you get out there and take your best shot.